say prior to handing over to Rabbi Shriki, today is your day. It really is just about improving our awareness of how we can better service the Jewish community. Because, you know, for myself, being in the region only a very short period of time, it's been very enlightening to me to hear so much about the Jewish community in this area. And I have to say, prior to coming here, knew very little and still don't know anywhere near enough, Rabbi, I can tell you that. But today is about the episode. So it's a learning process for us. It is about understanding some of your customs, some of your religious beliefs, some of the events throughout the year. I think most of us are familiar with the Passover, but there are many other holidays and events and so on that we'll hear about today that you know, we certainly need to understand a lot more clearly. And some of you do, by the way. I know that some of you are very close to it. And I do just want to, I guess, something that we want to get out of today is it would be fantastic to take us through a day in the life of somebody in the Jewish community through the whole week. Because we know that certain days are very special to the Jewish community, and we need to be aware of that. Okay, as retailers, we also need to know, you know, when we can capitalise on making sure that we've got product on shelf when we need to have that. Okay, so I do just briefly want to talk about Uri. Many of you know Uri from Bondi Junction. Uri's role is going to change dramatically moving forward. Uri's going to take some well-earned holidays, and when he comes back from his leave, he's going to be working very closely with each of the stores within the region. So Uri will be working with me, and we'll be spending some quality time with particularly the dry goods managers and the store managers. So we need to make sure we've got a really good, strong working relationship built up across the region there. And one of the commitments we need out of today is making sure that we have a kosher champion, I suppose you could call them, in every store. All right, because we really need to make sure we've got somebody there that whenever he comes into the store, that he can go and talk to somebody about that section and making sure we're in stock. So we'll talk a bit more about the kosher sections and so on afterwards. I'm not going to hold the rabbi up because, as I said before, we really appreciate your time. But please get the most out of today, and I think it's going to be a very open forum where we can ask some questions. Absolutely. And it is about increasing our awareness. So please, thank you, Rabbi. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I think what's important is to concentrate more on the practical concepts of Kashrut, or that which is permitted for a Jew to eat, as opposed to the philosophical side of it. But I will give a little bit of an introduction, and I think most importantly is to be able to give you an exposure to the practical side of things. What are the requirements? and also, excuse me, how we live our lives, what we need to buy, what we need to, how we need to feed our families, etc., etc. Just very basically, the concept of kashrut, or something that is kosher, means something that is fit for consumption. Now, we Jewish people, we take food very, very seriously. The reason why we take food very, very seriously is God takes food very seriously. How do we know that God takes food very seriously? Because He has spent time in the Bible expressing His will, what we can eat, what we should eat, and what we should not eat. What is behind it? Judaism has been teaching from time immemorial that you are what you eat. And we know that science has proven that what we eat turns into blood, and that blood goes to the heart and to the brain and to the mind, etc., and also heals and is part and parcel of forming our flesh, healing, etc., etc. So in fact, the statement of we are what we eat is literal. We are what we eat. We are simply made up of what we eat. Our teachers have taught us from time immemorial that the food that we eat makes a great impact. In fact, Just to give you an example, there are certain food by which the sages will tell us to keep away from for health issues. There are certain foods which the sages tell us that is not appropriate to eat before one wants to engage in the concept of conception, because certain things thicken the blood, certain things thin the blood, etc., etc. If this is true physically, then no doubt this is true spiritually as well. There is nothing more basic and more necessary than food and drink. And it seems that that which is so basic and that which is so required, God Almighty wants to have His stamp felt there as well. Which means to say that that which is so necessary for a human being to exist, we have an opportunity here to be able to recognize God within the food that we eat. It's not only the ingredients. For example, we are not permitted to be gluttonous. Not permitted to be a glutton, to eat just for the sake of eating and just for the sake of filling ourselves, etc. We have to have a certain intention behind it as well. The intention is also very important. The ingredients are equally as important. For example, when we eat, we make a blessing. When we make a blessing, we are recognizing that there is a God that created heaven and earth, and that we, so to speak, acknowledge and recognize a spark of divinity that exists in every single thing in the world. Now, with every single thing in the world, it has its vitamins, it has its minerals, it has its pluses. It also has a negative element as well. So it would seem that the Almighty has commanded us to eat certain things or not to eat certain things because they either have certain positive or negative qualities. It's got nothing to do with cleanliness. It's got nothing to do with this food is cleaner than other food. It simply has to do with the Almighty creating heaven and earth, creating the forces of nature, knowing what is more beneficial and what is less beneficial spiritually, and what, so to speak, allows the heart to be sensitive and the mind pure in order to be able to function, to live, and to serve the Almighty. And therefore, very basically, if you look at the Bible, you will see there are certain animals that are permitted, certain animals that are not permitted. Basically, all of the domesticated animals are permitted, providing that they have split hooves and chew the cud. The birds, we have a tradition, it says in the Bible which birds, and there's a whole list of it in Leviticus, and there it says which birds are kosher, which birds are not kosher. Generally, all of the prey animals, which are very ferocious, generally speaking, are prohibited, and many sages have taught us that perhaps the intent behind the divine will is that we don't take a very ferocious type of attitude towards other people, because as we said, you are what you eat. Okay, another thing is, besides the animals, there's certain fish that have scales and fins, they are permitted. Again, it says clearly in the Bible. Now, we have to understand that for a Jew, the Bible is very important, because this is the divine will. Certain commandments have reason. Certain commandments are based upon judicial laws, normal things that the intellect can perceive and understand. And of course, as we all understand, there are certain things that are way beyond the intellect, what we call the super-rational. And for a believing person, it is something that is taken for granted, because ultimately the Almighty is far greater and beyond our intellect, and that it's impossible for a human being to fathom the Almighty. It is impossible for a human being to fathom the will of the Almighty and the depth to His knowledge and to His will. And therefore, simply by fulfilling the divine will through the Bible, a person connects to the will of the Almighty, and a person fulfills the will of the Almighty. There can never be anything greater than that. There doesn't need to be a reason, although there are many reasons, as we outline. For example, we are what we eat, and that the food turns into blood and makes us who we are. So it would be very, very important to watch what we eat. So for this reason, we take food very, very seriously. And the ingredients, of course, are of primary importance. Years ago, things were simple. Bread was bread, meat was meat, cheese was cheese. Today, things are much more complex. So biblically speaking, you can't eat this meat, and you can't eat this meat, you can eat cows, you can eat this type of fish, you can eat this type of bird. We're also not allowed to mix, for example, milk and meat. The Kabbalists teach us that there are extremes in the world. Certain things that are extreme that can never come together. And this is expressed through the concept of milk and meat. And so therefore we are not permitted to have anything that has a composite of milk and meat together, even though they're 100% kosher. So for example, you cannot have a burger with a kosher burger with kosher meat made out with cheese on it. Or for that matter, you cannot have an ingredient, which I'll get to in a minute more at length, that has composites of milk in it. For example, there are certain spices, for example, that use a certain milk-based product in order to be able to prevent the spice from caking. So you can imagine that I'm going to buy, unsuspectingly buying a paprika or whatever it is, and I'm putting it in my meat casserole. For a Jew, it's absolutely prohibited. So we are very cautious, and it's very important to be able to understand that ingredients play a key role here, and that's why your role is very important to us. As things have become more complex, we have different additives that we take, different byproducts that come from animals or from milk that make things much more complex. Now before we get to that, it's also very important to note that it is scientifically proven, and this is something again that we know already from the Bible, because the Bible says that when you come into a country and you may take over the different utensils that they may be left there, etc., you have to what's called kosher them. How do you make them fit? How do you make them kosher? You must, if it's used as a barbecue, then you must expose it to fire. If it's used through boiling water, then you kasher through boiling water. The reason is because it is no secret, it is scientifically proven that vessels absorb flavor. And therefore, even though that I'm taking now a pot, and in this pot I'm putting 100% kosher ingredients, but the pot itself has absorbed within it something that is not kosher, so therefore for a Jew it would be not acceptable. For example, going to a restaurant and ordering, for example, a vegetarian meal, or a fish meal, a kosher fish, for example. So if he's cooking in the same pan that he cooked oyster or lobster or whatever the case may be, then I can no longer eat it. Then we get to the ingredients themselves. Now, in those days, things were very simple. Bread was bread, as I mentioned before. Oil was oil, and all of these different types of things. But today, we have the production line is so complex that, in fact, we can no longer even take the ingredients like we used to and read through and say, oh, that's fine. Because there are certain codes and certain numbers and colorings and additives. For example, I'll give you an example. One of the coloring agents that is in the power drinks, the Powerades or whatever these type of drinks, is actually made from the blood of an insect. So for a Jew, he cannot drink that. Okay, and of course gelatin is made out of from meat. Okay, so there are certain things that look perfectly good and perhaps are on the vegetarian aisle are in fact absolutely meat, and of course not kosher. Aside from being the kosher ingredient, for example, the kosher animal or the kosher bird, it also has to be slaughtered in a humane way. And the way that it is slaughtered is, I know that I studied this myself, and you have to take a knife that is absolutely sharp and absolutely smooth, and it is tested. It took me 2 whole weeks to accustom my finger to feel the slightest of nicks on the knife, because the slightest of nick causes pain. Whereas if you make a cut with an absolutely smooth knife, there is no pain whatsoever. It goes straight, and I can tell you because I cut my finger with one of those knives, I didn't feel the cut. I later felt the heat, the pain from the cut. The point of then cutting the animal through the neck and cutting the windpipe, of course the windpipe which brings oxygen to the brain, and also the veins around that stop the feeling, the sensation. So this removes pain from the animal immediately. And however, if the knife was not smooth, then you'd be sort of sawing through or even cutting through, you'd feel. and that is no good to us as well. So even though the animal may be kosher, but it has to be slaughtered in the proper way, and you have to learn many years how to do it. Another thing is you have to salt the meat. You have to remove the blood from the meat. We are not permitted to drink the blood or have any ingredients that has blood in it, including the animal itself, which could be kosher, could be slaughtered kosher. We cannot have the blood. The reason is because the Bible says the blood is the soul. The blood is in fact the life source that brings oxygen to the brain and really is the essence of our existence. As a respect to the animal, we don't have anything to do with the blood, so to speak, respecting the divine spark or the living spark within that animal as well. And of course also blood drinking and these types of things is very much related to pagan customs as well, pagan customs being idol worship, and of course the first commandment is that you shall not have any other gods before me. Okay, so this is as far as the animals is concerned. And as I mentioned, on previous times, many years ago, you'd be able to go and buy a loaf of bread without a problem, because a loaf of bread simply had kosher ingredients. It had the wheat, the flour, it had the oil. The oil of those days was very simple. It was all vegetable oil. Tallow, of course, is an oil. It's made out of animal fat. It's generally not used for breads or cooking and these type of things. It's very murky, so you can tell straight away. So if a person, you'd go into a bakery in those days, he would use vegetable oil and he would use flour and water, and the bread was no problem. But today, there's a lot of emulsifiers and a lot of different types of ingredients that are not kosher, are absolutely not kosher, are either made out of meat or meat byproducts, or the oils is no good. And the oil could be no good simply because it is made on the same vat as tallow, as animal fat is produced. So this brings us to the ingredients, which is extremely important. The ingredients, you may look at something that looks vegetarian, but it really is no good for a Jew. A Jew cannot eat it. That's why we take things very seriously, and the ingredients that we have must be either checked to be kosher, that they don't have certain items, or that they have, the company itself is a company that produces in the first instance kosher under rabbinical supervision. This has got nothing to do with, one time I called a company who was claiming to one of my members of my congregation that their lollies were kosher. You think lollies, what's in a lolly? You'd be surprised. So I called them up and I said, I've read your letter that you've sent to one of my members that you claim that you are kosher. I said, have you ever been endorsed? On the letter it said that we are kosher, but we have not yet been blessed by the rabbi. Now, having a blessing is always a nice thing from any person, not only just a rabbi, not a Jew. Every person to give a nice blessing and positive energy, positive vibes is a beautiful thing, but it doesn't make it in kosher. You can speak to it, you can bless it however much you want, it just doesn't make it kosher. I tell my kids, be good, doesn't always work. What you need is to be able to verify that the ingredients are absolutely kosher. The kosher market, for example, in America is phenomenally big. Aside from the fact that the Jewish community there is over 6 million plus. But actually the Gentiles, the non-Jews, are very much into kosher. The reason is because if you're a vegetarian, you know that anything that is kosher has no meat in it, providing that it's not a meat, ingredient. So, for example, pea you have it here as well, but in America, you go around the shelves and you'll find it in your supermarkets. And many things have OU or OK. It means Orthodox Union of Rabbis or Orthodox Kosher, these type of things. Next to it, you'll see a little sign, P, could either mean Passover or could mean Parav. Parav means that it's not meat. So any vegetarian or vegan can pick it up and buy it and know absolutely for certain that this has not even a trace of something that is against his own belief or against his own philosophies or whatever the case may be. Also, a lot of people believe that it's much healthier. In America, as I said, it's very, very big amongst the non-Jews because they believe it's much more healthy because you don't have all of these derivatives, you don't have all of these extra emulsifiers, you don't have all of these animal products that we tend to have, and until recently, things that were I think 10 years ago, up to 10 years ago, if it's less than 10% or a certain percent, you don't even have to bother to put it on the ingredients, because it's so not considered. It's not a primary ingredient. You don't even have to put it in there. Today, with the different allergies that people have, etc. So the government is much more strict with that, but it's still not good enough, because it doesn't prove to us that things weren't made in the same vat, or that even a certain little small derivative, of which even the government doesn't consider, we do consider. That's why the kosher market in America is very big, and in fact what they've done is they actually print on the product the OK or the OU or whatever rabbinical supervision it has, that people can automatically just go to the supermarket, pick it up, and, oh, that's a kosher product. If it's a kosher product, if I'm a Jew, then I know it's kosher, it's no problem. If I'm a non-Jew and I'm a vegetarian or a vegan, or I'm allergic to meat, or I'm allergic to milk, for example, right? Because if it's milk, it'll have M on, or D, dairy. So I know that it's, if I'm allergic to milk, for example, I want to pick up something from the shop, I want to know that it has no milk whatsoever, it'll say it there. So a kosher product, you can trust it 100% because there is no compromise whatsoever because of a religious belief. Okay, you mentioned that you wanted to know a little bit about the day of the life of an Orthodox Jew, so I'll just basically explain to you. Normal family has kids. First thing in the morning, you've got to have breakfast. So breakfast is either cereals or breads, with milk, jams, chocolate spreads from Israel, which I believe you guys hold as well, and wafers, cookies, these type of things, depending on how healthy you are. And then you've got to do the lunches. So the lunches are things inside the lunches. So either it's what the mother makes, but you also need snacks. Something to keep the kid going through the recess. So sometimes you send a fruit. Sometimes you want to give them a little bit of a treat. So you say you give them some of those pretzels or a slice of cake or this and that. And depending on how busy the mother is, you've got those cakes from Israel that are ready made. You just cut it up. You've got a couple of kids, cut up a slice or two, wrap it up, put it in there. Makes life very, very simple. And of course, the kosher ingredients are crucial to us because we've got to go in there. We've got to buy the oils, we've got to buy the flours, we've got to buy the this, we've got to buy the that. And whatever it is that we need to be able to, to make meals, prepare meals for our family, we look to you guys to be able to supply it to us. And if we can have it in one store, well, that's fantastic and that's great. So the bigger variety that you have, the easier you make it for us, and the more we're able to shop in your shops. Then we have Shabbat, Saturday. Shabbat is a very holy day for us, and we celebrate it through prayers, but also through a meal. And as I mentioned before, the concept of food is very central in our religion. Not so much because people like food and enjoy food, which is fantastic and good, but because it's one of the ways of honoring people, having guests over, having poor people over. Maimonides, one of the famous scholars of it 850 years ago, says that it says in the Bible that you must rejoice in the festival. And he says, he who does not have poor people or visitors or guests who need a meal at your table, this is not called rejoicing on the festival, this is called rejoicing of your own belly. In other words, you've got to care for others. When you care for others and share what you have with others, that's called rejoicing. So to us, it's very, very important to be able to sanctify and to make holy the holy days and the Sabbath, etc., through a meal. We need, as I mentioned before, we need to exist, so we need to eat. But it's very important the way we eat. So as I mentioned before, we make a blessing. We drink wine or grape juice. We sanctify. We make a blessing. Whenever a holiday or festival comes in, we always use wine. Because wine, King David says, gladdens the heart of men. So, since it brings joy, then what better way to bring in the festival, which starts always the eve, the night before, through making a blessing on wine that gladdens the heart of men, sets the mood much better. Someone one time asked me, Rabbi, do you drink alcohol? And I told him I drink religiously. And that is only, of course, on religious holidays or festivals or Shabbat, on the Saturday. So we commence the meal, the Saturday meal, with the blessing of the wine. We share it. We give everybody, wine. The kids have grape juice, and everybody's happy. Then we have bread, the challah that we have on Friday, the braided bread. And the reason why we braid the bread, usually done with braided too, to commemorate the time of when the manna fell from heaven at the time when the Jewish people were in the desert. So 2 portions fell on Friday, one for the Friday and one for the Saturday. To commemorate that miracle, we braid the bread with 2. Nowadays they do it even with more to make the challah bigger or whatever, but that's the origin of the custom. And of course we have here a representative from the bakeries, of which supply us, and we're also very grateful for you holding those breads as well, making it easier and more accessible for us. Sometimes, you have no idea what a big help it is, because sometimes, the kosher bakeries or the kosher shops are going to be closing because they too have to prepare for the festival, they too have to prepare for the Sabbath, and if we're in a rush or whatever, bang, we can just pop into Kohl's or one of the other shops and go in and buy. And in fact, I quite often get calls from people overseas staying in the city. Rabbi, we just came in, the flight was delayed, what do we do? So if they can come in time to my place, I invite them to my place. If not, I say, look, find a supermarket, Kohl's, whatever it is, or this one or that one, and you will find there, quite often you will find kosher bread, challah, pita, whatever the case may be, and you will find different dips. Ask where the kosher section is. You'll find grape juice and all of these different types of things. And you know what? You've made it easy for a Jew to keep his Sabbath, to keep his festival, or just have something to eat. He's come from overseas. As I mentioned, nothing is easier than America and Israel. Israel, of course, it's obvious, but America, it's just so easy, the fact that they put on that stand. So you can just walk in the aisle, and there are thousands of items. I remember I was in Alabama, in the south of America. Can you imagine Alabama? I went there for Hanukkah, one of the festivals, and I walk into the supermarket, so many things are kosher. So many things are kosher, it's just mind-boggling. Cakes, one of the famous, the equivalent of Sara Lee, I don't remember now then. The cakes, you go there, cheesecakes, dairy cakes, all different types of cakes, you just go there, they're all there, stacked there in the front. They have an OU on it. Phenomenal. Unbelievable. Different cookies that they sell, like I was speaking before, snacks, very important for kids to have snacks. I studied in America for 6 years, it was wonderful to be able to just go down to the corner shop and just pick up, a little cookie or a this or a that and just, ease my hunger. So as I mentioned before, the bigger the variety you have, and you may not grasp to what extent kosher living is all about, but the bigger variety that you have, the easier it is. As I mentioned to you, not all jams are acceptable because of different additives. So I've got a choice. Now we have a Kashrut authority here headed by Rabbi Kutnik, who they check different things. For example, the jams, what do you call the jam? The coffees, the kosher, for example. But how easy it is, that book over there. And it's a little bit more difficult for us because we have to memorize a list or walk, every time there's a new list, we've got to walk through, the aisles and look through, this is good, this is that. America, it's so easy. Just look at it, it's got the OU, it's got the OK, fantastic, just put it in there. I hope one day that will come in Australia. And as I said, it's not only for the benefit of the Jews, but it's also for the benefit of the Gentiles as well, because they know that this is for sure vegetarian, this is for sure vegan, or this is for sure whatever it is that they prefer to have it. As I told you, in America, there's a perception out there that the kosher food is prepared to a more stricter standard, so they'll buy it. If they see a kosher product and a non-kosher product, they'll buy the kosher product. And it's very popular there. So the variety that you guys offer us is very important. How easy it is when I'm just walking by the kosher section, I see a kosher jam. I don't even have to bother to look at IXL or to this one or that. I just grab the kosher one that you bring from Israel. Beautiful. The price is very, very similar. And perhaps not even enough for me to scoot down the other aisle and spend 10 minutes figuring out which one's kosher, which one is not kosher. So the ingredients, this is the key today. The ingredients. Years back, you could just pop into the shop. What is it made out of? Simple. Today, things are very, very complex. and therefore we either need to check out the products, the rabbis check it out, or we need to be able to bring out, if we don't have all of the stuff from Israel or America that's produced, or even locally, some things are produced locally under rabbinical supervision, and if you hold it, it makes life so much more easier for us. Okay, I think what we'll do is, I'll just speak very briefly about the festivals. You all know about Passover. It is a very, very central festival, even to non-Orthodox Jews, traditional Jews who want to be able to bring their family together and to want to be able to celebrate something, even not on a religious level, but on a symbolic or traditional level, or because everybody in their family has done it for generations, they too want to do it. So they go for the traditional foods, and there's the matzah, and then there's the wines and all of these things, but it's way beyond that. It's more beyond that. The whole concept of the kosher food on the Passover is just one simple concept. When the Jewish people left Egypt, we had such faith in the Almighty that we left without making any provisions. And it says that it was not even given enough time for the bread to rise. And as a commemoration for that, God commands, again it's written clearly in the Bible, where God commands that we shall not have any product that is leaven, means to say that rises. It's made out of any flour derivative that rises, or yeast for that matter. So therefore, it's not just not being able to eat bread on the Passover. It's not having anything that has the flour that has not been guarded not to rise. Flour is kosher for Passover, but it's only kosher if it was guarded. Meaning to say that no moisture or no water got to it, and therefore made it no longer a Passover product. So therefore, it's no longer a matter of just having the matzah, and you're right, it's not like that at all. All of the kosher products that you stock during the year, the pretzels, all of that, is no good. And there's a lot of things that we cannot have because they have a lot of wheat or starch derivatives. So we cannot have that. So on Passover, almost exclusively, we can only have things that are rabbinically supervised. So on Passover, you won't see me buying any of the products that I buy throughout the year. You will only see me buying products that come from Israel or America or here that are produced strictly under rabbinical supervision. Again, because there are derivative products that come from wheat that has not been guarded, etc. And even if it is guarded, the way it's produced is, of course, together with liquids that, of course, will cause it to be leavened, cause it to rise. Then we have other festivals that are not as restrictive, that are the same as the whole year round, but we celebrate it, and we celebrate it through a meal, because as I mentioned before, this basic ingredient we want to direct to God as well. We want to recognize God even in our daily functions, in the most basic thing of eating. There we want to recognize God as well. We want to be able to separate. One of the concepts that the rabbis teach us of why it has split hooves is to show that there has to be division. There has to be division between us and the animal kingdom. True, we eat and the animal eats, but surely a human being that has a divine spark, that is created in the image of God, and that has an intellect, cannot, by definition, eat the same way, sleep the same way, reproduce the same way as an animal does. Surely we are held accountable to a much more higher and nobler level. And that's why eating is very important. Not only the ingredients is very important, because this is a command of God, and also the way we eat. As I said before, with a blessing, or we eat on the time of a festival, we make a big deal out of it to induce joy and happiness and have the children around us. I think it's a very, very special and unique thing that you find amongst the Jewish people, that regularly, Friday nights and Saturday by day, and during our festivals, you will find 3 to sometimes 4 generations sharing a meal around. This happens very, very regularly. It's something that is, unfortunately, something that is not found, not too common in the modern world that we live today. There is a breakdown of family. I think the fact that there is food and festivals, I think that brings the family unit together. It's very important. I mean, how many people eat dinner with their children, or for that matter, even with their wives? So I think not for naught God has chosen food to be a very central concept in our religion, and it is a springboard for family unity, and it is a springboard for spiritual elevation. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll give some time for questions, I think. Are there any questions? Yes?
Candles.
Yes, I was going to say, and I forgot whilst I was mentioning the wine. I didn't see candles here as a prompt, as a reminder. Do you have candles?
No,
Oh,
that's why.
We don't import you, you're on your own. Candles, we use candles regularly. Candles, as it says in the Bible, the soul of man is a candle of God. You know, amongst different people, you have different customs. For example, how we honor and commemorate things. We honor things by lighting candles. Light. Light is a symbol of knowledge, of warmth, of spirituality. Every festival, we light candles. Every Sabbath, we light candles. When we want to remember the souls of the deceased, we light a candle. And so therefore candles are again a very important ingredient, not for eating, but an ingredient in our life cycle, in our time life cycle. And this is something that you stock. I see there as well. Any other questions? Candles, by the way, used to be made out of tallow. I don't know whether people remember. I remember my mother, when I was young, she'd always tell me, you have to make sure to buy the kosher candles. And I never understood, kosher candle, what's a candle? Because in her generation, many times candles were made out of animal fat. And they wouldn't burn the same as paraffin or olive oil. In my family, they used to light olive oil. They used to have a wick and olive oil, and that's how they used to light. But if they couldn't get a hold of it, or whatever the case may be, they would light candles. So therefore, when that melts, you have to be very careful on how to wash it, what to wash it, which vessel, because it's melted animal fat. And you cannot then use the same plate that animal fat melted on and use it for in your kitchen. So I remember clearly, many years ago, my mother was very careful about that. But today, all candles are made out of paraffin or a little bit out of beeswax, and they're very expensive. But still, the importers or the exporters from Israel and overseas, they make candles for different requirements. For example, you've got the 24-hour candles. 24-hour, sorry? 24, the 48, the 7 days. For example, when a person passes away, we commemorate 7 days of mourning. So now they've made candles, instead of lighting every day a candle for 24 hours, you know those little ones in the cups. Now they make it for 7 days. They can just light that, and it burns 7 days to commemorate the soul as it is elevated to its heavenly place. We also light these 24-hour candles during festivals as well, and also tea light candles is something that is very convenient. You travel overseas, you take these tea light candles. We have a lot of tea light candles at home because we have visitors who come. They want to light the candles as well at home. I have a very nice, beautiful candelabra, and we hold those 6-hour, you know, those little stumpy candles, because there's a glass container, and we just, fit them in the glass container, and they're fantastic. And they burn for 6 hours very, very nicely, and it's not like those big candles that, you put it in, they melt down, and they melt all over the place. So that, they've created a whole industry out of candles, and it's very good to see. And again, the more you stock these things, the more it's convenient for us. And
Abdallah candles?
Abdallah candles.
Yeah,
Abdallah candles. And just as we bring in the Sabbath with candles, we light the candles. When the Sabbath concludes, we light another candle commemorating that the first day of creation, there was no need for light, but after the darkness, the first night, there needed to be light, and we commemorate that by lighting a candle again. That's called Havdalah candle, a separating candle that separates between the Sabbath and the weekday. Yes?
How many candles do you use a week in an average family?
We light in our family at least, on a regular week, at least 10, 12 candles, at least.
And how many during the year would you use, including the festival?
Well,
so 12 times
10 times 53.
Yeah.
12 times 53, what do you get there?
530. There's the special ones for the special
There
festivals.
you go. The festivals, we light the same candles.
Same.
So then you get them again. Then we light those, during the festivals, we light those 24-hour, 48-hour candles. So let's say, every festival they use 2 or 3 of those. So you times those by the festivals as well. Hanukkah, the festival of lights. We need lots of candles there
So
as
probably
well.
about 700 candles.
But on Hanukkah, it was a couple of hundred candles. Now Hanukkah, we use olive oil in my house. So I go and buy the olive oil. Okay? The extra virgin pure olive oil. It doesn't have to have the OU on it, but you can stock the olive oil that has the OU on it. OU means Orthodox Union, it's kosher. And I know there's no problem. I can, clean the items in my sink and I have no residue of non-kosher ingredients. But they do sell small candles, for the small candelabras, small candles. I don't think that you stock those. They are small, thinner candles that can fit into a smaller candelabra. I don't have one of those small candelabras on me here.
Yeah.
They're colourful as well, red, blue, green.
They're
You
good.
do?
They're like a once in your
Oh,
you display it every year.
okay. So maybe it's just
Together
that
with the gel, yeah.
I only buy the. I've seen those.
The
chocolate.
gel, we stock hundreds of candles, 90 foods.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, different festivals, and what do you buy in different festivals? For example, there's a show selling about the dairy products and different stuff. What do you buy?
That's correct. Okay. Well, the truth is, the festivals are very holy days and special days. One of the ways we honor it is through a meal. Again, having everybody sitting around, we make blessings and these type of things. True, different festivals have different types of foods to commemorate different concepts. For example, on the festival of Shavuot, for example, a lot of people have the custom to eat dairy products, dairy food. The reason is because one of the names of Mount Sinai by which the Bible was given is called the Har Gavnunim. Har Gavnunim is related to the word Gvina in Hebrew, which means cheese. So to commemorate that, again, another symbolism of the very special time of Mount Sinai. Another reason is because when the Bible was given, it was impossible for us to be ready with all of the kosher laws. So what did they eat? Instead of eating meat, they ate dairy. So that's another reason why they ate dairy during that festival. And for example, Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, we eat different things that symbolizes different things. For example, we eat pomegranates. Pomegranates, the reason why pomegranates, because pomegranates has many seeds. And we want our good deeds. We want our year to be full of good deeds, just like the pomegranate has many, many seeds. And different types of things. But to make the meal possible, we need the ingredients. We need the oils, we need the spices, we need the olives, we need this, the gherkins. We need the ingredients. The ingredients is what makes it happen. Every house uses fresh food. See, we don't have the luxury in Australia and America and in Israel and other places. We do, where you can just go in there and buy the ready-made food. The ready-made pizzas and the ready-made, because the ingredients used there are not kosher. So we need the ingredients. Ingredients to us are very, very important. And what's happening much more now, which didn't happen when I was growing up, so I was telling the supervisors, is that the products that is being imported and that you are holding is phenomenal. We never had that. So we relied on we used to produce everything at home. Today you can buy ready-made cakes. And if not ready-made cakes, ready-made cake mixes. We just put in the egg, put in the water, put in this, presto, you get an egg. You get a cake. Any other questions?
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah, I think you just said was head of the year.
Yes.
It's New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. How big an event in your calendar is that in comparison to, say, New Year's Day in our society?
Well, it's extremely central.
Yeah.
Because this is the time by which we turn to the Almighty. Traditionally, this is the time which we are judged for the whole year. We give an account for the whole year. It's a very serious time, but it's a happy time as well to know that we have the opportunity of renewal. We have the opportunity of forgiveness. We have the opportunity to amend. We have the opportunity to ask forgiveness, where people are much more ready to forgive and people are much more ready to ask for forgiveness. So it's a very, very important time for us. And again, aside from prayer and study, we have a meal. And again, for the meal, we need those ingredients. The ingredients that are there are not that much different from the Sabbath, besides some symbolic foods that are basic ingredients, that are natural ingredients. But for the cooking of these ingredients, we need the oil, we need the spices, we need the jams, we need the honeys, we need all of the kosher stuff. Honey is something that is used a lot, and all honey is kosher. There's the thousands of products that you hold that are naturally kosher, that are produced in a kosher way, Of course, it's not possible for the Kashrut authority to check every product, and neither are they given access to every company. Some companies couldn't be bothered. As I asked this lolly company, I said, would you be interested in one of the rabbis coming and checking? I said, oh, no, you don't have to bother. Don't worry about it. It's a shame. But that's it. Yes, please.
Sorry, you talk about tallow a lot. Now, we know tallow is also a derivative of soap. And then once you get into that picture, a lot of beauty products these days have animal byproducts in them. How is that managed in the Jewish community?
That's a very good point. We are allowed to derive benefit from animal products, but we're not allowed to eat animal products. That's the difference. It says in the Bible that you shall not eat them. It doesn't say you cannot derive benefit from them. So, for example, you're allowed to wear an alligator belt, for example, if that pleases you. Are they still available today? Okay. So all of those byproducts, that's true, there's many byproducts in all of these things, which is not the case on Passover, for example. On Passover, we cannot derive benefit from any derivative that is not acceptable for Passover. So anything that has alcohol in it, for example, and that alcohol is produced through wheat products, right? As you very well know, beer is made out of wheat. We cannot have it, even though it's technically a kosher product during the week of Passover. It's not acceptable. Any other questions? There was someone in the back. Yes.
Yeah. I have two questions. One of them is, in supermarket we have organic soups, and I asked the supplier, is there any chance contact from your society? Is it the kosher organic soup? Fresh one can be a kosher product, and I don't know they contact you guys. I don't know, but is it possible we can follow up that kind of thing? Or?
Absolutely. The fact that something is organic does not necessarily say it's kosher. You can have an organic chicken that was not slaughtered in the right way, and therefore, for example, you make chicken cube out of it, and it could be totally organic, but it's not kosher, right? But there are a lot of things that are, organic or vegetarian, and that they try to keep to a similar standard as the kashrut. But again, because we take it very seriously, we cannot take it for granted. We cannot take for granted that something is written vegetarian or vegan. We actually have to check it, because even if it could be something that is acceptable to a vegan society, for example, but it could be cooked on a vat or prepared in the same vat that something of not kosher substance has been in it. So automatically it becomes not kosher to us. It could be actually vegetarian, but it'll have the flavor of non-kosher.
The reason I was interested was, as part of our supermarket, there is a frozen soups there, but not a fresh soup kosher product.
It's frozen.
Oh, Kathy's.
Yeah, that's frozen one.
Yes.
But if the kosher product soup is a fresh one, I believe a lot of Jewish customers and people that kind of product. That's what I was.
Could very well be. I know that I've seen them around in supermarkets, and it's just very convenient to be able to just go there and pick up something that is produced in the first instance kosher. You don't even have to produce. I think you're making the point, because I mentioned that there's not many ready-made foods in the kosher. That's correct, but it's coming in more. It's becoming more available in the frozen section, which is fantastic to see. You're a visitor. You're coming from overseas. How fantastic it is to go into a supermarket, open up and see kosher pizza, kosher meat pies, kosher soups, and you can just go home and eat it or microwave or whatever the case may be.
The other question I have, how come when you try the kosher product, some of the product can be mixed with the other label of product, like some of the products can be top of the kosher product or bottom of the kosher product.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. As long as you can prevent spillage, as long as it's wrapped properly, then it doesn't pose a problem. But for example, if something is wrapped, in the cold section, in the fridge section, for example, it's just wrapped with a little bit of gland wrap, and the blood is oozing all over it, or whatever is oozing from it, and you've got something kosher underneath, I won't touch it.
So you don't have any problem with
see, right?
No problem. We don't demand that the kosher product has to be on top. We don't mind if it's on the bottom as well. It is a good question, yes.
What about in our deli section? Like we use the knives or the slicers and stuff to cut the meats. So I mean that's not kosher for.
Correct. That's why you'll find that all the meats that you guys hold come directly from the meat suppliers or the butchers, and they're all wrapped. And on the wrapping is a sticker. And if that sticker is not there, no one will touch it. And if it's tampered with, if the sealing process is tampered with, we will not buy it. It's a very important thing for you to pay attention, by the way. The sealings on these products are crucial for us. For example, when I go on an airplane and they come, they are obligated to show me the meal on their instructions. They're obligated to show me the meal that is totally sealed. And they come to me and they show me, it's sealed, can we now heat it for you? Yep, can heat it because it's doubly wrapped. So it's no problem, it's doubly wrapped in foil, so it's no problem using their oven. Right? And then they bring it to me, it's all sealed. If it's not sealed, if it's tampered with, I won't touch it. So it's very important that when you're handling your goods, that it's sealed. But in regards to your deli section, for example, I noticed that from time to time you sell frozen whiting.
Yeah.
So that's kosher, it's a kosher fish. And since the knife was used cold when it was cut, so it's possible to take this fish to defrost it and to give it a thorough clean on the surface where it was cut, and it would be acceptable. So for example, if you were to sell, for example, frozen whiting, frozen barramundi, or these different types of things, absolutely acceptable. I know that that Starks and Grandma Moses and Krinsky's, they sell frozen, ready-made fish. All you have to do is just throw it in there. It's already breadcrumbs. It's already got the kosher breadcrumbs on it. You just chuck it onto the pan, ready. Very, very tasty. They've got it in coals as well. Fantastic.
Not fish and dagim.
Well, exactly. These are the two that are walled and dagim. Very convenient, and the price is not bad. I'll be honest with you. Fish in Australia is very expensive. Very expensive. So they buy fish in another country. I know that in Argentina, where my wife comes from, fish is very, very cheap. We're talking about $1, $2 a kilo. Good quality fish. Can you imagine? You buy good quality fish and bring it to Australia, freeze it, fantastic, and you guys hold it. You'll have a lot of customers. You know, a lot of customers, you know. And a lot of the times that the kosher fish, not necessarily all, but a lot of times the kosher fish is the better quality fish, so you'll have a lot of people going for it, even from the non-kosher. So perhaps when you're ordering these type of things, you have in mind, you say, well, yeah, one second, you're ordering this fish, I'm ordering that fish, is it a kosher fish? Well, you know what? Uri has the kosher list, and there's a whole list there of the kosher fishes, and all you have to do is look at it and check it, say, oh, that's a kosher fish. So if I'm able to please both markets, both the secular market and the kosher market, by importing this frozen fish, why not? For example, hockey or hake fish is a very popular frozen fish. In my opinion, it's not as good as the whiting that you guys have, but you know, it's very convenient to have it there. I know that you sell as well salmon and trout. They're a kosher fish. It's very convenient and handy to have there. So again, you can take the fish and you can, you know, clean it thoroughly where it was cut, and that's acceptable.
How about the wrapping that we use?
The wrapping. What's the wrapping?
For the fish, you know, the deli section.
How do you wrap it?
Normally use a white paper wrap. So
No, that's fine.
that's
As long
fine.
as it's clean, that's fine. There's no problem with that. Good question. Good question. For example, on Passover, not all paper is good because some of it has starch derivatives.
Yeah, that's right.
So for example, here's a paper. You think, what's with paper? Some paper have starch derivatives that come from wheat. And if I'm putting my kosher fish on it and I want to eat it on Passover, it's come in contact with something that is not acceptable on Passover. Yes?
Cleaning goods. On Passover, we see some cleaning goods from Jerusalem. So, through the year, well, what do? Do you use like cleaning goods, special cleaning goods or not?
Well, if it's for dishes, which comes in contact with food, I use a kosher product. But if it's for the oven, it's a totally non-edible thing, and it doesn't come. My oven wall can come in contact with the with food. It's no problem to use one of those sprays or these different types of
So
things.
through the year, you're gonna use just detergent.
Through the year, you
Yeah.
use a whole spectrum of
No, I mean like
kosher.
detergent. Like we receive a lot of detergent and soy out easy. So that's my question.
Usually the detergent that you have usually are ones that you buy for Passover.
The leavers, pink
The levers, the pink ones and all, they usually buy it for Passover. And whatever's left over, people usually just buy it as out of convenience to have it there, because as I mentioned to you before, you know, there are kosher detergents that I can use for the whole year, but if I've got the kosher for Passover one, again, if it's a similar price, if it's standing there, it's a decent quality, what do I care to grab that as well? So even if you may have some leftovers, right, which technically I don't really need to buy it if it's not Passover, then I grab it anyway, because it's kosher. It's kosher for Passover, it's kosher for all. Anything that's kosher for Passover, it's kosher for the whole year round as well. Okay, I'm afraid I can only take one more question because I have to give another lecture at 3:15. Yes?
Sorry, could you just give us an example as a Jewish family? How do you go about social settings? I mean, for me, food is a part of my social life.
I think everyone.
Exactly. But how would you go with eating at a restaurant, being invited to dinner with a person that does not follow kosher beliefs?
Cannot.
How do you?
Cannot.
Is there a kosher restaurant that you would be able to?
There are kosher restaurants, kosher outlets, kosher takeaways, there are. Other than just having a lemonade or a Coke or a cup of tea, that's about it. But then, what you can do, I advise you, is to step into Coles, go into the kosher section, and if you were to invite me, and for example, have one of those cakes there, I'd gladly have something to eat. Okay? Okay? And we'll just take one more. Anything else?
Just one question. We were in a opposition store, I won't name it, but we'll this is the name. And I noticed in their kosher section they did non-kosher products in there. Now, what sort of ramifications are there if someone went to a store, be it our store or a opposition store, and actually saw non-kosher products in the kosher section?
It's a bit of a concern, although I don't think they're advertising. They have a sign there saying only kosher products. I mean, they have a kosher section. The fact that they have a kosher section, it's up to me to be able to check to make sure that the product that I'm taking is kosher. And there could be a possibility that there could be other stuff. It's a bit inconvenient because you have to then look. I've noticed that actually, that they've got some other stuff which is organic or gluten-free, and they stick it in the kosher section because it's a bit of a pain in the neck. It would be easier to have the kosher section and just right next to it put whatever. It is a bit of a pain in the neck, but legally I don't think it's up to the consumer really, unless you're advertising that this is kosher. All it means to us is pain in the neck, because I have to look more carefully. So now I've accustomed my eye to know, I know the packaging, I know it's no good. But initially, for example, you're quite right, when I first saw, oh, this is new, didn't see this before, I look at it, I'm looking, there's no kosher endorsement. You know what I mean? Okay, just one more question.
Just one question. I'm a meat manager. Your festivals throughout the year, I can grasp those. I have a rough idea that order up a bit more on the chicken, order up a bit more on the brisket. Maybe from the Jewish community to Yuri is a bit more input to him, is this is what we actually really want to cook.
Well, I think what you've done today really answered that's fantastic. What was organised today, and credit to Shiur for doing this, is really awareness. I mean, there's never been before. The fact that we have so many staff, so many people coming together, showing an interest and are caring enough, and and having the ability to have questions and asking us is just a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful opportunity. We should have this more often in different ways. Be it Uri perhaps circulating a questionnaire to, for example, rabbis, for example. Is this or this preferred? But I must tell you that Shaul knows what the most popular stuff is. So if Shaul tells you, listen, this is popular, I'm telling you, listen to him. Because not everybody does listen to him. You know, people think that, oh, I know because I know that this is good, we like this, I like this, I'm going to get this product. But that's not necessarily, get it by all means, but that's not necessarily the most popular product of what I'm looking for. Alright? Yes? Yes, Rachel?
This is actually to the Coles staff who is. Can we have more kosher products in East Gardens as well as Maruga? Because it's, and sometimes they bring it on Friday, which is
What Rachel is saying is Rachel lives in Maruga Way. She's asking that she wants more products in the Coles, in East Gardens and Maruga Junction, that there should be more of a variety. And also the other thing she was mentioning is if you deliver it before Friday, because the ladies are cooking it before Friday. By Friday afternoon, everything's got to be ready. So you want it there on the Wednesday, Thursday. What is it? Sorry?
You could always just come west then.
It's Shaul's fault for getting the delivery master. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming and showing interest. God bless you. See you all.
Thanks.
Sorry I got to run.
Oh, man, Sandy, is that okay?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I've met some of you here today already, so for those who I haven't introduced myself to, I'm the actual buyer for grocery kosher products. And I've been buying for 3 years, and I think this is probably one of the best days that I've actually had out in stores to actually see the opportunity that kosher actually still presents to us. So I think we do a pretty good job. And this year with Passover, our sales were up 34% and our profit was up 38% because we did such a good job. And I'd like to thank everyone to give Uri a big round of applause for the effort.